So we are the Berkeley Postdoctoral Entrepreneurship Program, where we would like to foster entrepreneurial spirit within the community. And, it's open to postdocs, it's open to graduate students. And, as you see, there are so many different people here with sort of the same goal of being interested in startups. And so much of what BPEP has done in the past and continues to do is help translate innovations that are developed in the laboratory to the marketplace, as well as energize towards building entrepreneurship within within UCB's sort of ethos and system, as well as build a community of entrepreneurs, which include mostly grad students and postdocs, as you can see here. So this is our current team. We have a very diverse group of people from different backgrounds. If you were here when Naresh was giving his introduction, he was the one who started BPEP back in 2010, if I'm not wrong. And we also have Alex, who joins us from Brazil once in a while. So we have a phenomenal group of people here, and feel free to ping any one of us. But we also would like to invite you, and if you're someone who's interested in startups, if you want to connect with other people who have similar interests and you want to get to know more resources, please join us. We're always looking to grow our team and just have conversations. So please feel free to reach out through our emailing list or through the email as well. And so here we are today for our non-dilutive and angel funding for startups. But we have two other workshops in our series, one in November, where we're going to be talking about building teams, equity, and how to use the best of the resources available within the university. We already have two people lined up. So one person from Chong Tang from Skydeck and Darren Cook from the Life Sciences Entrepreneurship Center. And we have another entrepreneur we're still reaching out to. So it's going to be hopefully a good session too. And then the last one in December is going to be on virtualization. So that's the last one that we'll have this year. And so we have 3 people here today, and we're going to start off with welcoming Dave today. And I'm going to pass it on to Moni, who's going to give us a brief introduction about who Dave is, and I'm going to and then we can get things going. Thank you.
Thanks, Radhika, for the introduction, and thanks everybody for being here today. I think like you all are looking for building your own startup and already started something, and you need some good advice. And we have 3 phenomenal and experienced people who are associated with startups and funding startups. So welcome, and we'd like to first invite Dave. And Dave Schaffer is the Hubbard Howe Professor of Chemical and Molecular Engineering, Bioengineering, and Molecular and Cell Biology at the university here at Berkeley. He is also the director of California Institute of Quantitative Biosciences, which is commonly called QB3. He received his BS from Stanford in 1993 and PhD from MIT in 1998 in chemical engineering. Then he conducted a postdoctoral fellowship at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies before joining Berkeley in 1999. So he applies engineering principles to optimize gene and stem cell therapies. And his work includes developing the concept of applying directed evolution to engineer targeted and efficient viral gene therapy. He has published more than 230 peer-reviewed papers, has advised 90 graduate students and postdoctoral fellows. He is an inventor, and he has about more than 50 patents, and developed technologies that has been used in 7 human clinical trials. In addition, he has co-founded 6 companies, including a clinical stage public company, which is called 4D Molecular Therapeutics. And he has received recognitions, including the Andres Archivos Professional Progress Award, the American Institute of Chemical Engineering, Pharmaceutical and Bioengineering Award, the American Chemical Society, and many more. So without further ado, let's welcome David and let's hear his stories, his journey. And yeah, David.
Thank you so much for the very kind introduction, and thrilled to be here speaking on behalf of several organizations, including the Bakar Labs, which I direct, QB3, which I'm the executive director of, as well as the Bakar Fellows Program, but mainly here to talk to you today about Bakar Labs. The org chart is essentially that the BBH is an umbrella organization that contains under it programs as well as square footage, namely the Bakar Labs, the incubator, and the much of the operation is operated by QB3. So what's the overall mission of what we're trying to do? It's to become or should we be so bold, the world model for entrepreneurship for public good. So there are many efforts to be able to start companies, including out of my alma maters, Stanford across the bay, where a lot of the focus is on just making money. We're interested, of course, in that to be able to benefit our community as well as our campus, but we're also very mission-oriented on trying to develop technologies that can really solve societal needs. There are a number of subsets of benefits to this. We provide education for undergraduates, graduates, postdocs, as well as faculty in our community on how to translate research and how to work within an industry setting. We're very interested as well in taking inventions from academia in general. We work with technologies invented not just at UC-Berkeley or the UCs, but from many parts of the world or the country. We're interested in enhancing the impact of these by translating them from academia into companies where they can turn into products that really address societal need. And we're also interested in really benefiting society by creating solutions to societal problems, for example, in health and the environment, but also resulting in new jobs and economic development, especially in the Bay Area and the state of California. So all of these efforts revolve around, as their crux, small companies. And this is a subset of the companies that we have within our facility right now. And if you take a look systematically and really identify what are the ingredients that companies need to succeed, a number of key needs are over here on the left. And I really want to go through these kind of systematically and describe what we're doing component by component to be able to address these needs. First of all, there's space, and that is often a major challenge for academia's interest in developing incubators. And thank goodness for an incredibly generous donor, because we have space, ample space, gorgeous space. So for those of you who haven't seen it, it turns out that this is a former art museum, and it was deemed earthquake unsafe the year 2011. All the art moved to a new building, and this space was actually abandoned for several years. So when QB3, the Berkeley campus, and our donor foundation got together and really decided that there needed to be an incubator to translate technologies in biotechnology, they identified this square footage, and several years later, all of a sudden, we're able to open up for business 11 months ago, where we now have 40,000 square feet of gorgeous space. We're currently housing 26 companies. We anticipate we'll reach 35 at steady state when we're fully onboarded. And we also have space for events that are strategically related to our mission, as well as a number of academic programs. Okay, so that takes care of space. Number two, you need, of course, science and technology. And we have wonderful companies that apply to become a part of our community. We have a tenant selection committee that chooses the best and the brightest of them. And then we try to resource them by giving them access to incredible scientific knowledge as potential consultants, SAB members, and potentially new employees. So we have a scientific advisory board from QB3. We also have the Bakar Fellows program, which I'm not going to go into today, but they essentially serve as a scientific sounding board and consultants for our companies. We set up a seminar series, and we thought we were going to have 2 Nobel laureates presenting this year. It turns out we had 3. Carolyn Bertozzi presented just yesterday. And so we're thrilled for Carolyn, and also really happy that she ended up being the speaker that kicked off the seminar series during this academic year. We have a pre-incorporation mentoring program that we hope may be of interest, where in many situations, there's an incredibly talented team that's coalescing around an idea, and they need to advance it further to overcome key scientific, medical, financing, IP challenges that if they're able to solve, would then enable them to go out, pitch, raise money, and potentially become our next tenant. So this is we're setting up this program. We have set up this program. It's launched both to benefit our community educationally, as well as to provide a feeder stream of new companies to come into the Bakar Labs. So we onboard teams. There's an application process. We have a group of I'll skip to the next slide, very, very accomplished mentors with experience as serial CEOs, as financiers and VCs, as well as people with regulatory and drug development experience. And we will match together the incoming teams with these mentors. And the goal is that these mentors provide the knowledge and guidance to get the teams over the hump to the point where they can then pitch and then become a company. And I'll mention as well that we actually have capital to support this program. So if there's a situation where the mentor really and the team together decide that there's some critical component that's missing, such as a proof of concept data set, we can actually fund that team to generate those data with the guidance of the mentor over a period of months. And then again, our ultimate goal is to enable these teams to pitch, raise funds, and then become potentially tenants. Okay, number 3, to grow a company, you need really talented people to build onto that team. And QB3 ended up obtaining from the state of California, thank you, Gavin Newsom, a $5 million grant to be able to build programs to train students to enter into the workforce. So we're setting up several programs. We already have an undergraduate internship program that we call Quest, which is the QB3 Workforce Education in Bioscience and Biotechnology program, where students get paid by us. They're free to the companies. QB3 funds them to do a 9-month internship within the companies. We hope and they get to attend all of our events as well, including our scientific seminar series. We hope this is great for the students. They get work experience. Hopefully the companies end up getting the ability to advance their technologies and potentially a future employee. And we're currently working on extending this program to graduate students as well as to postdoc interns. So love to hear from you, some of you offline, as to whether this would be, something that would be useful as a program. So in addition to junior talent, we're also interested in recruiting senior talent for companies. And we have an executive mentorship and recruiting program where we have several very seasoned senior people who, again, are alums. That's a common theme. Berkeley has 500,000 alums. And if you end up taking a look at the best and the brightest of them, we have some extraordinary people who are Cal alums. And we have a couple of them who are former VCs and former executive recruiting people. And they're devoting their time and their effort to set up an executive mentorship program as well as a C-suite recruiting program so that we can end up providing companies with talent, not just at the junior, but also at the senior level. So these programs are absolutely up and running. The Quest internship program, as well as the executive mentorship and recruiting program. Okay, 4, business and commercial knowledge. In other words, network. So there are many areas in which our companies, our tenant companies, are going to need to interface with in the outer world to enable them to, as a result of coming into contact with leaders in these sectors, to advance their companies, advance their programs and their products. So this includes, for example, pharma and biotech, where they need access to strategic investment, to business development relationships, or potentially to M&A in the future. VC, of course, to get financed, legal for a variety of legal needs or interactions. So we strategically reached out into the field and identified leaders in each one of these sectors and recruited them now as our partners, our affiliates, where they actually support our programs financially, but more importantly, with their time and their efforts. So they set up, they're the basis of our business seminar series, where we have 1 seminar per month. And they provide us with people who speak in a variety of different areas about mistakes that have been made. So Corey Goodman from VenBio, for example, gave a talk over the summer on the top 10 mistakes he's seen companies make when pitching a VC. And we hope that, learning about stories that worked out well as learning about areas in which companies can improve, can significantly enhance the experiences and the knowledge of our tenant companies. So we have leaders in biotech, including Amgen, Bayer, Genentech, Eli Lilly, as well as AbbVie. Legal, we have Wilson Sonsini and Goodwin has just come on board. Banking, we have Silicon Valley as well as First Republic Bank. And again, they're the basis of our advisory group, our seminar series, as well as networking events. 5, capital. Of course, companies need funds to grow. And within their current market over the past year to year and a half, the cost of capital has risen. So we're helping our companies to raise new funds as well as to enable their funds to go further. So several of our affiliates are funding golden ticket competitions. It turns out, coincidentally, I have to depart just after this because today was our AbbVie golden ticket competition, and I jumped out at an AbbVie event and need to go back to it just momentarily, where they actually funded 2 golden tickets where 2 companies end up with a free bench and a free desk for a year as a result. The Cystic Fibrosis Foundation funds 2 golden tickets. We just got on board the American Cancer Society to fund 1. So that's 5 free benches and 5 free desks per year that can benefit 5 companies. We've gotten companies access to core facilities and equipment on the campus, and I won't go into the details. We had to overcome a lot of bureaucracy, but when a company goes and uses a core facility on the Berkeley campus now, and we have millions of dollars worth of high-end equipment, where it used to be that if a company went into that facility, the university owned the data. And now we got an exception across the campus where if a company pays for a simple fee for service, they own the IP that results from that. And finally, and we hope to be having a high profile press release relatively soon, we're in the midst and the final stages of setting up a venture fund so that we'll actually be able to invest in our companies. And we're setting up partnerships with a number of really high level blue chip VCs to be able to provide co-investment opportunities where they lead and then we end up participating in a syndicate to invest within our companies. And finally, we believe that companies that end up recognizing that they serve a strong global and societal need are going to be heavily motivated and directed in a way that can positively serve our community and our world. And so we are working on formally establishing programs to support or foster entrepreneurship towards global and societal good. And we'll be next year in the spring semester organizing a summit where we're going to bring together a number of partners who see similarly that entrepreneurship occurs best when it serves a strong societal need. So this includes partners like the Schmidt Future, philanthropic foundations, Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, American Cancer Society, and others, as well as other companies that are kind of an interesting combination of venture and philanthropy. And we anticipate launching a new annual award for societally impactful entrepreneurship. So hopefully this is something that serves our community and our ecosystem. We hope that you all can become part of it, both potentially to attend our programming as well as to become our future tenants. So thanks so much. I'd be happy to answer any brief question as time in your program allows.
I know you wanted to get some feedback, like were there any specific questions you wanted to ask or poll or?
Yeah, it's really, would there be an interest in a postdoctoral fellowship where it's a later stage, more senior postdoc who has technology that is outstanding, but missing one element, such as proof of concept data in an animal model for, Alzheimer's disease. And we'd have the potential to fund something like that, but we want to be sure that, in the spirit of a company doing customer discovery to ensure that there's a market for a program like this, BPEP is, really the first entity that we felt we wanted to reach out to learn whether or not there would be a demand for a program like this. And it's not just money, it would be mentorship. We want to provide support and guidance by tapping into our credible network of alums who've done this before to potentially enable folks to become new tenants within Bakar Labs.
Absolutely.
And my apologies again, I have to head back to this AbbVie event, but thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. Thank you, Naresh and others, the leadership of BPEP. We really appreciate it. I really appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks. Okay, would like to invite Annie. She said she is self-introductory pretty much. So she will introduce herself, she said. So we'll let Annie speak now.
Yeah,
Okay.
can you hear me? Can you all see the screen? So I've put my email contacts in if anybody's interested there. And so they asked me to talk for 15 minutes on basically funding 101 and, you know, what's the perspective there. So I'm going to cover a lot of information, but I'm going to try to focus on the key takeaway. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to explain what's the alphabet soup of fundraising, which is common, preferred, safe, all that stuff there. And what's the best investor at what stage? They're not always appropriate at the right stage. And then your first customer is going to be an investor. And so you need to understand the perspective of the investors. The basic things as a CEO and a leader there is that you have to get the perspective of the customer to sell them what they're looking for, not what you want to sell them. And how investor make decisions, I think will be interesting to get that perspective. Then we talk about the slide content if you're putting together pitches. And I think it's very important, especially with postdoc people, no offense. And my husband is a PhD, so I can say this, is that people don't buy technology. People buy solution to critical problem through them. Okay, that's the first point. The second one, that investor want to understand the business models. Then afterwards, enabling technology. Okay, we don't invest in technology, we invest in businesses. So I think it's really important because you have been trained for the last 20 years of your life to focus on the technology. Now you have to figure out so what, as we call it. Okay, so I'll get going on the other slides. And again, some of them, you know, I'll give you a copy of it. So my quick background is I've been in your shoes. I've been an entrepreneur multiple times. I got lucky or smart, depending how you look at it. I went to Harvard, so it's the Berkeley of the East, to basically start company all in healthcare. So patient monitoring, some diagnostics, some therapeutics, and all of that there. So I have the perspective of what it takes. If you have nothing to do in your life, you can look at my artistic website, and I'm left brain, right brain. And during COVID, if you don't know, if you haven't got your vaccine yet, take a look at an insight on YouTube, and then it will basically get you so scared that you need a vaccine. So just for the fun of it. So what's an angel group? There's around 225,000 active angel investor in the US. So there's a lot of people around you. Around 12,000 are organizing angel groups. So it makes it easier as opposed to trying to run one check at a time. And why do an angel group versus a VC? They do small investment round, but they're taking higher risk and they're much more collaborative because they have a passion for Radhika or Naresh and they want to help you as opposed to just having a financial return. Most of them have built companies so they can really help you. They typically take 5 to 10% of the net worth. So these are people who've done well doing their own companies in the past. Where VCs use other people's money. So they have a very different way of looking at things, just give you the heads up. And they accept many more plans to review than the VC would. So you have a higher chance of getting somebody you can talk to there. And there's some businesses that are not appropriate for VC financing. We can discuss this in the Q&A. So HealthTech Capital, which is a company I founded there, has 95 active members with a combination of angels, we're focusing on healthcare, which is we have medical doctors, payers, technologies, medical device. We have, some of you may be interested, we have analysts in residence. So these are people who are post-MBA, PhD, I have a typo there, and doctors there who basically want to see the perspective of the investor. So basically it's a fancy word for interns, but they help us go through the process and all of that. So if you're interested, contact me afterwards. Our membership is 72% are angels, the rest are VC and corporate VCs. We're very strong on the female side, don't know why, just kidding. And we're very diverse. So, you know, we don't really care about being politically correct. I mean, correct is just the way we do things. So let's look at the funding stage, and it can be really confusing. But in the early stage, which is your first money in, the VCs are not going to talk to you unless you think you can validate the cure for cancer, and they still don't believe you. So you typically have to go to what's called friends and family or getting some grants. And I know you're having a conversation about that. After you have some type of validation, this is when we talk about the accelerator like UB3 or the angel groups. The angel group continue to go all the way to the seed stage. Now there has been some smaller size VCs called micro VCs who start to play there. And then the VCs, especially after the correction we've been dealing with for the last 6 months, they've really moved to higher ground, as we call it, which is the A ground is really a proven product from a whole bunch of point of view, depending some type of products you do, but it's no longer, they don't play here, they play over here. Now, QB3, since he's left, I can say anything I want. But you have to check the accelerator. The accelerator is two information you need to find out. What is their take? They can take up to 7% of your stock. Some don't. Okay, so really ask, what is the percent of your company they're going to take? And more importantly, what's their funding rate, which they may not be willing to disclose. So this is a data from 2019 on healthcare related, and especially biotech. I know a lot of you in biotech. Accelerator, you can see the QB3, just because of the strong relationship with UC-Berkeley and Berkeley, as one of the highest funding rate, but that's still 51%. So give you the heads up. Some of the worst one is startup health, which is less like, what's called a spaghetti spray on the wall. That's 7%. And then StartX from Stanford, if you have a relationship with Stanford, doesn't take anything. And so they have extremely high quality from, I would say, C to Series B. So a lot of, quality VCs do follow those areas there because there's a high quality there. JLabs, which some of you may be interested there, they have a lot of space in the biotech space there, but they don't necessarily have a huge funding rate. Okay, so just do your homework. So at what stage do angel invest? It really seed to what's called Series A, or maybe some B follow on. This is where we play. That's the people who are going to help you get off the ground. And to give you an idea, if total investment by angels, 43% of all the seed rounds in the US are done by angels, and the VCs are 57%. As soon as you get to that Series A, which means you have some proof of the product, or in the health tech world, maybe some early revenues, that's when the VC starts coming in there. So really learn where you are and who you need to talk to. Now, they asked me to explain to you the alphabet soup of funding. So I'm going to go fast here, but there's two types of stock. There's what's called the common stock, which is, as founders, you want to get that. And you want to get them at 0.001 cents, because you want to buy for very little for a whole bunch of IRS reasons there. And then you have the preferred stock, which typically goes to the investors there. They are senior to you, but you can have a ratio at the beginning as high as 10-1. And you want that because as the company create value for the investors, that means you have an acceleration of 10x, and you're a PhD, so you understand what I'm talking about. So at the high level there, the common is really what you give as a compensatory payment to people who have done sweat equity and basically develop the technology and all of that. Typically, it's invested over 4 years. So don't assume you're going to own all your stock. No investors, we invest in a company where the founders own all their stock, and we can have a discussion afterwards. Typically, you keep a stock option pool for future people you hire, and you want to basically make sure you have a good attorney there that helps you set up the boards and your rights that you have as a common and as a founder there. The preferred stock is the traditional structure that the angels and the venture people invest in. It does convert into common at an IPO or at an acquisition. Okay, that's why basically the two values merged there. Now, be very aware of what's called preference payment. So they always get preferred before the common, and they have what's called participative preferred. And if you're not careful, it's a little word that's buried in a 300-page document that says they get paid 3 times before you do it. So you really need to get some good advisors and some good lawyers on your side there, because otherwise there won't be too much left for the common there. We'll talk a little bit about pre-money valuation, but at the high level there, you start with 1 million shares and you multiply this by dollar shares. It's $1 million pre-money valuation. That's the way we think. You raise another $1 million. The post is the pre-money plus what you raise. So it's 1 + 1 = 2 in this case, if I raise $1 million there. And then we have the convertible notes. Convertible notes, it's a debt structure that will convert into the next round at the price of the next round. Typically, you agree to a discount. Typically, it's 20% discount to whatever the next round is. And at 9 more and more, there is what's called a cap. And a cap means that I guarantee you that if the next round is, let's say it's a cap of $5 million, and the next round is at $10 million, I get the value at 5. That means I get twice my amount of shares. Okay, and that's because the investors have an 80% chance of losing their money, and they want some upside if they're going to take that risk for the next 2 years there. Okay, the safe, do not use safe is my key takeaway there, but we can talk more in the discussions afterwards. It was really started by Y Combinator for the first 100K when you have not even incorporated yet. And unfortunately, it has been abused, and I'll share you some data, but it's not really good for you, the entrepreneur. It looks like you're punting to way in the futures about who is going to decide the legal structure and the price and all of that. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs who totally destroyed the cap table and their own ownership because they did not know what they were doing there. It's a lot of issue on the investor side where we don't want to do that. We don't do safe unless we're forced to. So to give you an idea of the deal structure, this is the angel group. There's a report called the Halo report, so you can download there. On the average, 66% of angels do new deals and 33% do follow-on, so they've invested in portfolio continue. 53% are preferred, it's priced. 32% are convertible notes, and safe is only 9%. There's a distortion in the value there that safe is the way to go. It's absolutely the exception. And to give you an idea, at the seed level, maybe this 8% nationwide of safe that used to be 0 4 years ago before the market went crazy. At the Series A, it's close to nothing. Okay. On the average there, a seed round is a couple of $1 million, a Series A, because by that time you're building a team and you're hiring is between $5 to $10 million, just to give you some sense of it. Valuation are all over the places based on industry. This is a graphic for you. I figure you like this PhD types. Is that this is the average primary valuation by type of industry, and you can see healthcare is one of the highest valuations there because it has huge potential there. But really be aware that when somebody says, "Oh, I got a pre-money of 20," that doesn't mean it's relevant to your sector or what you do. So don't get caught up in that thing. Plus, the world has changed drastically. It turns out that angels have backed some of the biggest names you may recognize on this list. So angel is very often a way to basically play, and those angels have connection with all the VCs, so they can really help you open those doors. Now, I want to get your perspective because we all talk about the value about the unicorn. Now I'm going to basically give you the stats. It's 0.1% odd that you will be a unicorn. And I'm saying this with humility there because I have no idea how I did 8 of them, because statistically it's impossible if you multiply the maths. But this is a study on 25,000 startups that were financed between 2000 and 2010. You have to wait 10 years, to see their exit. And then 3.8% had an exit over $100 million, which in my mind is not a winner. That's why I put this in things. And the unicorn, is 0.1%. Why is that important? Because now I'm going to explain you the viewpoint of the investors. And investors, basically 65% of the time, this is the VC industry, loses money. Okay, that means they need to get this huge return to pay for all the one they lose. It's not that they want 10x on you and they're abusive, because they need 10x so that when Naren goes belly up and Radhika is successful there, I can absorb the Naren loss. I'm just picking on you guys because Naren, you don't have a video. I gave you the heads up. And so be the statistics there, you can see that all these 10 to 20x returns, they're really a small percentage there. Haha, I got you on the video. The angels are similar, but the angels are losing more and more money because there's been so many people coming into the space that on the average, they lose their money 70% of the time. So therefore, they're going to be expecting, high return, which means they're going to argue with low valuations there because they take such a high risk where the VCs don't, they invest later. So the risk is not as high. And you can see that, they need those to basically absorb the one that they lose. So you need to understand that perspective. So therefore, what's the investor criteria? When they look at you, they say, first, what's the market? Is this a big problem? Is this a big problem to people who can make a decision, who can afford to pay for it? Is this a must-have? Who are the decision maker? Who are the shareholders? In healthcare, it's complicated. There could be 10 different shareholders with one that has voting power to block it. You really need to understand how that works. Who pays and why? Product risk, will it work? And do you have any IP? IP is not critical there. It's really a barrier of entry that people are looking for. Team risk, haha, this is my favorite. You have a flexible mindset. I'm going to disagree with Naren and then see how he responds to it. If he tells me I'm full of BS and blah, 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 he knows better because he's a PhD, that is such a red flag, don't do that. But are they able to execute on all the amazing promise they're giving there? How much money do you need to exit? Is this one of these new drugs that's going to fix Alzheimer's, which is $1 billion, you're going to lose your money 98% of the time? Or is this something like Radhika is doing that I may do like a single cell bio tool that I can go to market with $2 million? What will it take? Very different play. Why am I saying that? Because you all know statistics, at least you better if you're Berkeley. And if I give you 80% chance that you're going to succeed for the market risk, 80% chance the product will work, that the team is incredible, which is never the case because there's always holes at the beginning there. And I'm really concerned about people following my investment there. That's still a 58% success rate. So if you really put real numbers, which is, I'm not sure about the market, but let's say it's 70%. The team has a lot of holes, so maybe it's 50%. There's a lot of risk on the product to be commercialized. You can see how this success rate goes straight down. So when we're listening to a pitch, we are trying to make this assessment. And we're trying to find a fatal flaw and what is the risk we're taking. So we're not necessarily in the early stage investing in the fact that Radhika is going to build $1 billion company. We're trying to figure out what are all the things that can go wrong in the next 2 years. What's the risk? Okay. And so how do we make decisions? This was a very interesting survey from Harvard. I had to kind of do my plug. And 30% of the deal sourcing to VC and angel comes from their personal network. This is important. How do you get hold of these people? Very often they go to conferences there, they see your pitches there, and they initiate the first contact, but they decide to contact you, not the other way around. 20% referral from other investors as they're trying to put together a syndicate. 8% of portfolio referral. These are your best source. Go on LinkedIn and find out who they've invested in and ask the CEO of those companies to basically introduce you. If one of my portfolio companies says, I need to talk to Naresh, I will take the call. Okay, so it's a very open area there. And only 10% of cold calls, honestly, the VC says that's a deal sourcing. The number of, if you ask a VC, what's the percent of the deal that gets funded with a cold call is close to 0%. So you really have to basically find a way to get in. To give you an idea on the funnel, 28% of people that approach a VCs get a first meeting, 10% gets to a partner because they have all these different layers, 5% gets into due diligence, 1.7% get term sheet, and 1% gets funded. These are kind of typical in a VC side. Who do you favor, the jockey or the horse? We live and die by our founders. It's all about you, how you communicate, how you present yourself, who else is going to be on the team. It takes a whole village. What's your viewpoint? You know, you're the PhD inventor, you want 95% of the stock and the whole world will come to your doorstep. But you understand it's going to take a lot of effort, you know, to get there, and you don't have that expertise. You're going to bring these people in. You know, how does that work? The business model is more important. You notice on this list, there's no technology on my top 3. Okay. So what's our process? Typically for us, for example, we get 500 submissions per year. We pick around 10% that pitch to us once a month. We have a monthly screening there. We give feedback with all our members there. We vote. Half of them typically go into due diligence. We give them feedback after they go to due diligence, and we probably invest in roughly 1/3 of those. Okay, that kind of gives you a typical angel process here. This is a reality check. On the average, the VC will spend 3.4 minutes looking at your slide deck. The first 3 slides are essential. Don't say that healthcare is screwed up and you're going to fix healthcare because God knows the ocean is boiling really hard here. Go straight into this is a specific problem. This is the benefits to the buyers and who's going to pay for it. And by the way, this is how you're going to do it. Have a summary slides that give you the 5 takeaways of your presentation. So if Radhika pitched to her neighbors, ask her afterwards, what are the 5 takeaways? If they don't articulate right, change your pitch. Okay. And then there's a big difference between unsuccessful. They made the decision in the first 1.36 seconds. So in the first 2 minutes, they know if they pay attention or not. It's really essential that you get the first few slides correctly there. So start with your takeaway. In successful deck, they spend 4 minutes. They fly through it to see if there's a fatal flaw. Then they decide to invite you. So those decks are really a teaser to open that door. It's not a PhD dissertation with all the different ways, how cool the technology is and how much time you spend publishing papers. And do not put 15 lists of pages of all your publications. Don't do that. I had to say something funny. Presentation content, start with the value proposition. What's the problem? Why is it a big deal? What is your solution? What's the value, the benefits, not the features, the cost and the timing and the payment for solution. Who is going to buy this? Then you talk about the market, how they're going to make decisions, how you're going to acquire them. Then you talk about the technology and the barrier to entry. Then you talk about you to execute. Okay. Competition, don't ignore it. The number of people who don't have competition there, it's a kiss of death because we have probably talked to most of them. So if you just poo-poo yourself, put like a little BCG matrix right in the upper right corner there, and there's nobody else on the slide deck, they will bat, you know, that's not a really good thing. Do your homework there. You may have regulation reimbursement, be honest where you are. Some idea of pro forma, you know, we all know that's your best educated guess. And who's going to buy you out? Especially in this space there, it may take 10 years and a lot of money, or you may be able to sell the company in 2 to 3 years. It's really important there. And then what you ask, the number of people put a deck there, they don't say what they want. They want 1 million, they want 2 million, you know, what's the stage, what do you do with it? Always have what's called the ask, okay? So I figure you're still alive, you're still smiling to me, that's good.
Hopefully we are learning. You already answered.
Your PhD, you should be able to absorb like a sponge.
Yeah, I am absorbing. You already have answered a lot of questions, but we'll come back after hearing from Jill. So we'll let so Radhika, you want to introduce Jill, and then she can share the slides as well after that.
Yeah, thank you, Moni. Thank you, Ann. And that was, yeah, that was a really good overlay. It was a great overlay. Yeah. And Jill, feel free to have your slides up, and I'm just going to get started with your introduction. So our third speaker is Dr. Jill Fuss. She's the managing director of the Activate Berkeley program. Dr. Fuss previously researched DNA polymerase, the enzymes that make the DNA in our cells, while she was in graduate school. At Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, she focused on the structural biology and molecular mechanisms of DNA repair enzymes. And then she and another Berkeley Lab scientist, Steve Yanone, followed their scientific curiosity in archaea, which is actually a type of ancient single-cell organism that live in extreme environmental conditions. And this made them realize that these so-called extremophile enzymes could be very useful in a range of industrial applications. And so they co-founded Cinder Bio and joined the Activate community as the 2018 cohort fellows. In 2021, she left Cinder Bio and began consulting for Activate as part of a working group that the program continuum director, Sarah Morrill, convened in order to develop Activate's new education framework. She has strongly advocated for equity and access in the sciences and entrepreneurship. She's staunchly supporting women and mentoring women scientists as well. So she received the Berkeley Labs Director's Award for Exceptional Diversity Achievement and the Visionary Award from the Berkeley Chamber of Commerce, among other accolades. So without further ado, I'm going to let Jill take over the stage, and I'm excited to hear from her. I work in a similar organism. I work in chlamydomonas, so it's fun to see where you've come from archaea.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I that was an awesome intro. So I don't even need to say anything because I think that really covered it. So I'll just get right into Activate. So Activate, we really we want to help scientists bring their research to market. And the reason we have pictures of all these people is that we're really like a people first organization. So fellows first, we really, as Anne said, I guess we invest in the jockey and not the horse. So we don't pick people for their companies or their technology. We pick fellows, and that's really our guiding philosophy. And so what is the Activate Fellowship? It's 2 years of salary and $100,000 in research funds and access to more capital. And in Berkeley, we partner with the Cyclotron Road program at Berkeley Lab to give our fellows access to world-class facilities at Berkeley Lab. So Cyclotron Road has their own dedicated lab space, and we've also had fellows embed in scientist labs up at Berkeley Lab. And then you add in a really custom-built education program. So this was really built from the ground up, and it's built for scientists that are transforming into entrepreneurs. And we use a lot of the stuff that Anne was talking about. We really focus on like tech, team, market, finance as pillars of that education. And then we have this amazing community. So as a startup founder, it can seem really isolating. And so we have this community that makes it less hard, I would say. It's still hard, but it's less hard. And so that's our team and network, and of course the fellow community. So, our typical fellow will be someone right out of grad school or postdoc, or also mid-career scientists. but someone who's made an incredible discovery in the lab and wants to figure out if there's commercialization potential. And so these are the earliest stage companies. I'm thinking of Anne's graph of like, where you get funding from and like what stage of company. These are like the super early companies. Maybe it's a sole founder or a co-founding team. Sometimes we get fellows who have built a slightly bigger team, but we're right in there at the point where like companies are getting SBIRs, and sometimes even earlier, like they get their first SBIR when they're in the fellowship program. So extremely early. And the fellowship, it really works. So the program was founded in 2015. We've supported about 150 fellows. We've created 106 science-based companies, and they've raised over $1 billion in follow-on funding at this point. And so that's a 23x leverage on that money invested, which is great. And they've created over 1,000 jobs. So it really does work. And the way this is like an example of like that journey. So I think the astonishing figure is that the government spends $70 billion every year creating academic scientists. And the private sector spends $120 billion scaling early businesses. But there is this gap between, some sort of research that's funded in an academic setting, funded by the government, and the private sector. And so we try to fill that gap. And so we call it the 0 to 1 journey. And so you start the fellowship, so you've got usually a technology, but you might not know where it's going. And so you spend time exploring, probably pivoting, setting a roadmap, figuring out what market you're going to go into, setting those milestones, all the stuff that like goes into a pitch deck. We help our founders really, do all that hard work that goes into each one of those slides. So like building a techno-economic model and, figuring out a market and doing the customer discovery and all that hard work. This usually allows our fellows to attract that follow-on funding, and we're agnostic as to the source of that funding. Of course, many of our companies do raise VC funding, but a lot raise money from government grants and non-dilutive sources. Some do it through partnerships with large corporates. So, and a lot of them do it, raise money from all three of those sources. So it's really, varies quite a bit. And then, they're able to validate that first product during the fellowship. So an example of this is Antora Energy, and they were in my cohort. I was at like the TED Road, and so I that's why I picked them. But two guys, Andrew and Justin, two incredible people. They actually ended up merging with another Activate team that was a year ahead of them, and so they had a founding team of 3, and they really explored what they were going to do. And their technology is building a low-cost thermal battery. So basically, like they heat up carbon. And then they use that to generate energy. And so they were able to attract funding from ARPA-E grants, VC, California Energy Commission, for instance, and then build their first prototype. And since then, after leaving the program, they've raised over $50 million. So they're definitely on track to do well, and they're installing their first pilots. And then some other companies that you might know of. So Umaro Foods is in Bakar Labs at UC-Berkeley that David talked about. And they make bacon from seaweed. And I just tasted some yesterday, in fact, and it's really delicious. So I highly recommend it. They're in restaurants right now. You can't buy it in the store, but if you go to Little Red Window in San Francisco, you can get an egg sandwich with their bacon, and it's really good. They told us yesterday, about a quote that a vegan tasted the bacon and actually cried. It was so good. And then another company is Gradient. They make these cool like saddlebag heat pumps. to replace window air conditioners. So these are much, much more efficient. And cooling is going to be a huge issue in the future. It already consumes a lot of energy. And then Melinda makes a closed loop system for recovering carbon fiber composites. So those are some examples of the companies. I want to really tell you that applications are open now. So they close at the end of the month at October 31st. This is the timeline. So if you get in your applications by October 31st, maybe by April or March, you will know if you're in the cohort. But if you want more information, you can go to activate.org/apply, and there are recorded webinars. There's information about the application and all that sort of stuff. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking specifically about Berkeley. Well, I should say actually our origin story is that it was really born out of the national lab. So it started as Cyclotron Road at Berkeley Lab, and was a pilot where the two founders, Lon Gore and Sebastian Lunas, basically convinced the director of Berkeley Lab for some seed money that, you know, this was needed to fill the gap. And so they ran it as a pilot. And then that was in 2015. I did it in 2018. I was the fourth cohort. And I think they had really worked out a lot of the kinks by then. So they always called themselves a startup. And so in 2019, they expanded to Boston. And now they're expanding into other locations. So now there are 4 Activate sites, Berkeley, Boston, New York, and now we have a fully virtual program that was really born out of the pandemic that draws from across the country. But to tell you about the Berkeley community, which I'm the managing director of, so that means that I'm the main mentor for all of our fellows in Berkeley. What it looks like is that we have every other Thursday, we have local programming. And so, you know, we'll gather together for a community lunch, we'll have programming, and that usually includes like founders talks or, you know, time management or executive problem solving, you know, helping each other with pitches. And then we have what we call collisions after programming. And that's where we bring in guests, oftentimes VCs, but also, you know, HR professionals or engineering firms and, you know, lots of different kind of vendors and people that want to work with startups. And then we do a social hour after that. And you know, we do monthly or more frequent check-ins with the managing director, so that's me. We also do quarterly meetings. And so this is really to get fellows in the cadence of like a quarterly board meeting. So looking back at the last quarter, figuring out what worked, and then setting the goals for the next quarter. And then of course we have monthly community events. This is just a little bit more about the partnership with Cyclotron Road. And I've said much of this, but the R&D funds really come through the lab, and so give access to the facilities at Berkeley Lab. And Cyclotron Road is part of the DOE LEAP nodes, which is the Lab Embedded Entrepreneurship Program. And so in addition to Activate having 4 sites, LEAP has 4 sites at NREL, Argonne, and Oak Ridge National Lab. And so like all this is just to say that like the Berkeley Fellows really have lots of organizations really championing their success. This is the team. So me at Activate, and Katie Sharp is our Senior Fellowship Manager. Julia Orman works with us and really handles all the logistics. And then our team at Berkeley Lab, which is Tom Kerstetter, is the Chief Science Advisor, Melanie and Kellyanne. And so these are the people that you would work with if you were a Berkeley Fellow. And so, you know, just to close, like the world has tough problems right now. And I really, truly believe that science is going to get us out of many of them. And the things that we're really looking for are, you know, solutions to some of the world's biggest problems. So this is like climate change, this is energy, new energy, clean energy, clean water, how to source materials, new materials, all these sorts of things. I will say that we don't fund healthcare. So very, very different from what Anne was speaking of. And that's just because we feel like there are lots of resources for healthcare startups specifically, and definitely in the Bay Area. And the other thing we don't support is pure software. So we're really looking at science-based hard tech type of solutions. And so that's it from me. I just wanted to say that Naresh recorded a really great podcast with Matt Price, who is the president at Activate. And I really encourage you to listen to it. I thought it was fantastic. And it really gives a lot more detail than I was able to give today about the founding story, the philosophy, you know, all that sort of stuff behind Activate. So yeah, I recommend listening to it. And I'm just looking at my notes. Oh, I should say all this comes with no equity. I usually forget to mention that. And then people say, well, what's the catch? And no, it's really there's no equity. So, and we like that because it allows us to be very agnostic about your path and to support the fellow rather than having a vested interest in the company in particular. So yeah, Activate's a nonprofit. We don't take equity. It's a great deal. Yeah, and that's it for me. Love to take some questions.
Hey, thanks a lot, Jill. And as you can see in my jacket, I also work at Berkeley Lab as a postdoc, and we do bring science solutions to the world. And thanks for taking care of that part. Yeah, you already covered a lot of things, both of you, and we have about 20 questions asked by our participants pretty much, but we'll be covering most of them. Hopefully we still have time. So one of the first questions everybody, especially the new people, ask, like, how do I know as a postdoc or as a grad student that my idea is worth for a startup? Like how to take a fast step? Like what is the
Well,
like?
I think that what I see a lot of very, very smart PhDs is that they fall in love with the capability of the features that they've accomplished. They can get smaller, this and that, but they don't ask the question, so what, which I kind of do this in plain English. And the so what is that, how can you use that capability to do something that somebody could not do before that's important to them? And so you really have to spend time on what's the problem you're trying to fix. And it's not uncommon with technology, you know, especially some of the broad platform, that you may have to do like a spreadsheet of all the crazy brainstorming of what you could do with it. And then ask yourself the question, how big is this market? How easy can you reach it? What type of information will they ask me before they believe me? And healthcare, that's a big question there. And the regulatory, you know, if it's a drug there, you may need to raise $1 billion. Good luck with that. And so you really need to basically, I would say, get people to help you. Not fall in love with your technology, but ask all those business questions and then help you prioritize them.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, I think it should be the first question you ask is like, is this a problem worth solving? Because your time is super valuable and you don't want to spend a ton of time working on something that's not going to be worth solving. So, and
it has to be big, because if you're going to spend 5 years of your life, and Lily, I'm going to pick on you because you don't have a video, you better make sure you have a good chance of success. So if you kill yourself in the next 5 years, which is what entrepreneurship is, make sure it's a big idea with a big market. I see people, I'm a reviewer for the NIH, and I just look at this and I force the NIH to ask the question, if it does work, who's going to use it and how many? And it's astonishing, the number of people getting all these millions of dollars grant, and the problem to be solved is worth $500,000. I'm making this up. And so people lose perspective. And I think it's really important that you have somebody challenging you, and that you have that flexible mindset I mentioned earlier to say, oh, no, you're wrong. It's to say, why are you asking?
Yeah, and I'll say, like, different methodologies for figuring this out. I mean, I subscribe to the lean launchpad methodology of customer discovery.
Yeah, but that doesn't work, Jill, in healthcare, because the FDA doesn't like that concept of iterating with the patient.
Sure, exactly. But like, going out, the idea is that you go out and you talk to people, you get out of the lab, and you don't just work on your technology in isolation. You work on it through talking to people, and I think it works really well for scientists in particular, because you can have a hypothesis about your technology, and then you can go out and test that hypothesis through conversations with people, and then you come back and you analyze that data, basically. So yeah, that's one way.
Oh yeah, and on that subject, Jill, don't go to academic, please. I know that's the context you have. Go to the real world.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, at Activate, we require at least one advisor that is not an academic. Yeah, you got to get out of your academic mindset for sure.
How to find that person? That's my question.
LinkedIn is very powerful. I mean, I mean, the Valley is so fantastic because there's a culture of helping. And so everybody wants to give back if they've been successful. So I'm able to basically reach out everybody in the Valley with 2 or 3 LinkedIn connections there. And people are usually pretty good at trying to do that. If you ask them, as long as you're not asking for money, so that's different. But if you just say, hey, I'm trying to find an expert for this. I know you connect with Dr. So-and-so. For example, in healthcare, go to PubMed. Do a search, who's publishing about that. On the paper, there's always somebody has an email. It's not the chairman of the department, it's the worker bee. Talk to the worker bee. I emailed them and I said, your paper was fantastic. I have a few questions about it. Do you have some time? It's a 90% success rate. Then you talk to them and he says, oh, by the way, I'm working on this and this, what do you think? And then they want to help you. I mean, so it's a journey, and everybody you meet, you ask for 2 more introduction.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, any conversation that you have, you say, is there anyone else I should be talking to? And that can really lead to great places. But I totally agree. Like, LinkedIn is a great place to start, but just making calls and talking to people. Yeah, you find that right mix.
And by the way, I have a story, Money. So I was helping a professor from Stanford, so I won't say the name, in healthcare. And I basically opened the door to Merck, very senior person at Merck, and the head of the NIH granting process for the SBIR. And the person did not show up on the Zoom. It is such a kiss of death. I was so pissed because, I was using my contact trying to be helpful. And I basically went to the person like Jill at Stanford that had brought that person to me to say, what the hell are you doing? You need to train those academics, especially professor, no offense, guy. You're still young, so you still are begging. To basically don't think the world is coming to them. It's the other way around. They have to start begging the other way around. It's a very good humility team. But don't do that. If somebody opens the door for you, I don't care what you do, show up 15 minutes earlier and just be there and be ready, do your homework, learn about them, explain to them why you want to talk to them, do your homework.
That was my next question, pretty much. The lesson learned from, when you are in touch with the postdoc or grad student, what exactly, the mistakes they do, and what do you expect from them?
I mean, the classic one is, I'm going to pick on Yang. So Yang calls me and she says, well, what do you do? I said, well, if you don't have at least the decencies of checking me on the internet, which not everybody has something on the internet, and do your homework, what you should do is to say, Yang should says, well, Anne, I'm really interested because you did this company there, and I think it's relevant to what I'm doing. And I talked to one of your portfolio company and they say, you're fantastic, even if it's not true. But then you personalize it. Then at least you got 5 minutes of my time for me to pay attention. Then if she's really smart, she's going to tell me why she's going to fix the wall and why it's going to be big. Then I spend a bit more time. You have to really kind of earn your time. But the worst thing you can do is to say, well, why should I talk to you? And the other thing, don't send slides that are protected with passwords or are not downloadable. I mean, the friction. Your job is to get rid of all the friction, so you have my 3 minutes of attention I'm willing to give you with the benefit of the doubt.
Okay. Yeah, as a grad student and as a scientist, like, we tend to, postpone things until the deadline pretty much, and we don't like assignments or homework. So that's the very bad habit we all have. So that's a very good point, by the way. hopefully.
Oh, here's something else controversial. We're being recorded. So, so you all have been self-selected and trained to be left brain. So if you go to a solution, it says hypothesis, I collect data, I do some analysis, I collect more data, and blah, 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 blah. 20 minutes later, I go to conclusions, okay? So you go A, B, C, D, E, F until you get to W and the end of the alphabet. We as entrepreneur, you basically says, this is what I plan to do. Nobody disagree. I go on to the next one. You start with conclusion. If people have some question, he says, well, this is my analysis there. They say, where's the data? And then you can go there. Very rarely, 90% of the time, people say, okay, I got your conclusion. Let's move on, because there's so much to cover. So really catch yourself. You're not doing a thesis dissertation. You have to grow that right brain and read the audience. If they're all doing emails, you lost them.
Maybe a follow-up question on that, Anne. Like, what are the best founders done? We all tend to have a hypothesis bias. When you come up with a hypothesis, we tend to stick to that and like not try to prove it wrong. And we're always trying to prove it right. And then I think that's a spiral that you don't want to go down. As a scientist, that's what we do. But as an entrepreneur, what have the people done in terms of like testing and then like moving on to the next hypothesis and building on that? Any notes from your?
So I always say, you must have heard the expression, the elevator pitch. If you cannot explain in 90 seconds why I should pay attention to you, that means you're not really focused yet. And so the data I've seen with PhD, the brightest one, because I work with a lot of those, I typically work when there's two people in the company, is that they're trying to fix the whole universe and all the problem of healthcare, and then probably a planet Mars. And what we have learned in startup and entrepreneurship, it's the reverse. So focused. Here's my entry point. I have a capability there that's a market of $500 million to fix the way the intensive care unit is monitoring sepsis. I'm making this up. It's worth X. I have a pathway to reimbursement and blah, blah, blah. After that, I have this pathway to do that same technology that will open up this market of an extra $3 billion. But let me first tell you why I have a whole bunch of ICU people from UCSF who love my idea. Now, should I pay attention to that? Yes, I will. Now, if you come to me, Naresh, and says, diagnostic in hospitals are so screwed up. And I'm going to do this platform that can basically change diagnostic with a tiny bit of blood. That sounds like Theranos. And you see what happened to that one. So I think you have been taught to investigate and see and do a lot of different experiments, see which one makes it, okay? The investor doesn't want to go through that process. They say, I want to prioritize, and I want you to take a bet of what you think has the highest chance. Now, I want you to have a plan B and C and D, so your backups in case the first one doesn't work. But I want you to be ultra focused to say, assuming it does work, so what? Who will pay? Why will it pay? What's the roadmap to commercialization? All of that. And I'm not expecting you to have all the answers, but I'm expecting you to talk business as opposed to, I have this cool technology, I'm going to try 15 different things and see which one takes it.
Yeah.
We don't invest in R&D.
Yeah. A follow-up to an earlier question you mentioned about market sizes, like, for early stage investors, it has to be large, big enough, like, Well,
it depends. So if you come to me, and so we invest in a bio2 company there, and they were able to, because there's no regulation, they were able to come to market within 18 months. They got all the key opinion leaders to use the product there, and we're starting already get people trying to buy them out. So that's an angel play. So I say, okay, with $2 to $5 million, or maybe 10 at the most, I'm going to get an exit. The VC will not play in that, but I could get a huge exit, and you as a founder, you will make more money with that play than to try to be the next Facebook. So I think you have to know who your audience is and what you need to get the validation of the market. If you are doing a new drug, and and Jill will know a lot about this, it's going to take a lot of money before you even know if the damn thing works. Now, there's a play to sell it to somebody else in pharma before they find out it doesn't work. But that's assuming you're trying to do the right thing, which is the product does work. It's a very long haul. Therefore, for those, it has to be a big market because you need to raise hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah. Jill, your take on that, because most of the technologies that you tend to pick fellowships for are futuristic. How do you determine, what is a good market size? And sometimes I think, you just look at a market report somewhere, Google, you don't even have an access to the whole report. You just put it's like growing like $25 billion. Like your role is going to be like so tiny in that. Like how does one justify, what are the right things to do for an early stage entrepreneurs in terms of defining a market rather than putting it like a $25, $50 billion market?
Yeah, I mean, Activate really, we're pre-VC. And so that's really like having a really good idea of what your market is. And so like definitely for our selection, we're not super focused on the size of the market. We're looking, we judge things more on impact, like what difference will this make in the world? And at the same time, we don't want to fund people who are working on like a bridge to nowhere. There's got to be something there at the end. But as part of the fellowship, our fellows, they figure out those market sizes. So they figure out what might be a beachhead. And then, we spend time doing techno-economic modeling. And so this is like we do both top down and bottoms up analysis to try to figure out the market size. And so the top down is like when you're looking at market reports and trying to figure out like what portion of that market that you can address. And then, bottoms up is like figuring out how much is this going to cost and what could I charge for it and that sort of thing. But you're right. I mean, we do look at futuristic things, and it is hard to size a market that doesn't exist. If you're going to do that top down analysis, you're really relying on something that exists. And if this is a brand new technology that's really going to like change a field, it might not have a market size that's really easy to figure out. So,
and then to make things more complicated, I've been the most successful creating market that don't exist. And that's health tech. And so you're going to disrupt a workflow. You are going to convince people that they had this unmet need that they had taken for granted, and that you're going to fix it for them, and blah, blah, blah. And you can educate. And the nice thing about that is that you have a couple of years when nobody's going to believe that there is something there. That's the good news for the competition. The bad news, you have to find somebody who's willing to see your vision that there's no validation for. And in health tech, I know some of you are more hard science, but in health tech, it's all about the business models and the business creation. It's not about the science. And you can build very big company that way.
Are there stories about how your decision was swayed by a naive postdoctoral grad student comes to you and says like, I have a $250 million company, or $500 million is the market size. Is that something you would look at? Like, I'm digging this deeper because most people are naive in this space.
I think, Naresh, you're asking the wrong question, if I can be correct. And I know we're recording this, I have to be careful. We really don't care about the market size because we don't trust any of these numbers anyway. And whatever forecast you do will divide by factor of 2 or 4, depending on how aggressive you are. And so really what we're focusing on is to say, how big of a problem is this? And how important is that to the person who's going to take a chance on you to try your first product there? And if it's, people are dying from this and you're the only one that is addressing it and you have a way to fix it, that will get people's attention there. And then you have to figure out who's going to pay. And then it goes into the problem of healthcare in my world, which is reimbursement, CPT code, and all that alphabet soup. So that's really, and then you see how many people could benefit from that. And then you multiply by the price. And then you see this could be a market that's being modified, expanded, or changed. Like my husband in New World, he got involved in decreasing the cost of making the ATCG, because I know Jill, you're in that business. And it decreased by a factor of 10, and the market exploded by a factor of 100x. So at time, you have to really be smart because that market was too small. Nobody cared about it. Instead of selling the machine, he sold the services. So he turned it around in 24 hours. And that became a market that did not exist before, but exploded the whole industry. So as I said, you need to ask the question, what is the problem I'm fixing? How much are they willing to pay for it? Like in my case, I don't sell the product there. I sell the value of the creation of the whole supply chain, or the whole, and that's what I'm selling. I'm not cost plus. I basically capture the value and I give them half of the profits and the other half of the savings for me.
Great, thank you.
Does that help?
Right.
Yeah, very helpful, yes.
So
I see there's a question in the chat about Activate open to international students.
Yes.
So yes, it is open to international students with the caveat that we have diverse funding sources. And so some of the sponsors, they require US citizens or something like that. And so
it depends.
but you have to be, able to legally work in the United States in order to be able to do the fellowship.
So Jill, I have a question for you. Are the people dedicated to spend the next 2 to 3 years full time on studying the company? Is that the criteria? Because I see a lot of very smart people there. They're assistant professor or associate professor, and they don't want to lose because they pay so hard to get there. And so they want the technology to get out, but they don't necessarily want to commit full time. And so how do you make that transition there to get somebody to take it over and run with it while you're working maybe 1 day a month or 1 day a week?
Yeah, so for our fellowship requires that the people be all in. So working 100% on the company during the fellowship. And so if that person is a professor, they have to quit their job.
Yeah, but you see the dilemma, I see that a lot.
Yeah, and so, what often happens is that the professor doesn't want to leave their job. And so it's a talented postdoc or graduate student that
Yeah, because
commercializes the technology.
I'm a reviewer for the Moore Foundation, which you may be familiar with.
Sure.
And so a lot of these people are really, very bright, young professors there. And that's always the dilemma when you get to a certain level there. How do you get it out while they still want to stay in academia?
Yeah, I mean, it's nearly impossible to do,
I tell them it's like having one foot on two boats or diverging.
Yeah. I mean, it takes all your brain power to do a startup for sure. Yeah.
Okay. We have another question from Naren. How do postdoc build a sense of market size?
Oh, I think we just talked about that, didn't we?
I think we already talked about it.
But I'm wondering about the next sentence, which is we only want the next grant or paper.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Naren?
I think you covered a lot on like what market size is and that we should know the market size when you're doing the elevator pitch and when you're thinking about an idea and evaluating it, because many times as an academic training, you're thinking, okay, what are the things you need to do to build your CV? And that's the part that I was saying, like, you want a grant to get to independence, you want a paper to sort of move on, you want to publish, you want to get those things out. But if you're thinking of evaluating a technology, I think you almost always need to know what your market is. And what are the resources? Like, where are we looking for that? Because you may have something that is needed in the market, but never really even think about it that way.
Well, I mean, I'm going to be cynical with you. If the market already exists, that means there's competition. And so then the question, why are you going to be better than the competition was established with contracts and all of that?
Mhm.
I personally like to go after what is the problem that Radhika has and Yang has, spend some time with and find out if there's a lot of copycats of them, multiply that number of people who have that problem there with what I think I can capture for the value of my product. That is your market. As opposed to say, I'm going to be better, faster, cheaper than the other guy. That is so hard to build a company doing that. You're much better off if you look at the valley, people have become big. They start things that did not exist before. There was no market size. There was no report you could get on the web to tell you it's going to be worth X. By the time you get there, it's a commodity and you're not going to compete in those markets.
Just a quick follow-up on that. Like, no, when I'm, let's say, approaching you and saying, I don't know what the market is, how do you
No, but you come to me and I don't know what you're working on, but I will say there's 15 million surgeries per year. And I'm going to go after the 1 million that have this problem there where they basically, I'm going to make this up, they leave the sponge behind and it has complication. The average costs $150,000. So I think I could save $150 million to the hospitals. I'm going to be targeting the 3,000 hospitals there that have at least 10 ORs. And I'm going to multiply this by every OR. And I'm going to think I can charge $5,000 per OR. That is your market size. That is the type of details. I really don't care if you tell me it's $1 billion. Everybody else is saying that. So that's like noise. If you go to say, this is the players, this is what I do for them, specific to them. This is what I'm going to charge. This is why they can justify that. It's an ROI or payment system there. And you multiply all of that. And then I would say, okay, Naren has a cool product there, but what happens if he only penetrates 10 to 20%, not 100%? You never do 100%. Do you have a big business? If you start getting to the 50 to 100 million potential, then it's worth talking to. It's about you. It's not about healthcare, the universe, or whatever. I mean, I used to be in telecom a long time ago, and I says, I'm not counting all the telephone pole and say I'm going to sell one product per telephone pole, because they throw you out of the window if you ever say that to a VC. You have to be specific to what you do and why it's important.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's helpful, because I think that was the thing that I was thinking of. Like, if it's new and if it's novel, then
you do a
how
bottom
do
up.
you?
You do bottom up, and I will challenge you on your assumptions. And I could say, well, half of, that's assuming it's something for pregnancy. And so for pregnancy, this is, well, because I've seen a few of those, says we're going to basically sell these products to all the parents, and they're going to make sure it costs $5,000. We're going to do, let's say, the genomics of the baby, because in 20 years that could be useful. I'm making this up. Well, first of all, there's only 3.6 million births in this country. It's dropped from 4 million. Half of them are Medicaid, which means they have no money. Okay, of the 2 million that are left, a whole bunch of those, they've had a few kids already now, so they're not really feared anymore. They just don't, they've gone for the mill. So there's really maybe a market. And if you look at the blood core, maybe it's 3%. So I take 3% of the 1.8 million. You have to do the math for me there. And I multiply this by, maybe I can do, will they pay $5,000? I doubt it. And then that's your market. You have to really do the bottom up by segments.
Makes sense. Thank you.
That goes back to what is the unmet need I'm fixing. If you cannot explain that, you haven't done your homework on the problem.
I think what's really important is that your narrative, like of your pitch deck, should really match your financial story as well. Those need to meet up.
Let's don't do the $0 to $50 million in 3 years.
Yeah.
So you asked me for a story. So there's one guy, and he had these cool products. I was very interested with millions of dollars lined up to invest. So we were serious about it. And so I says, I want to talk to the guy who's going to execute, because you have a forecast of $0 to $80 million in 3 years, which is really hard to do. I mean, it's very rare in healthcare, at least. And I said, how are you going to do this? It's a very open question. And the guy said, trust me. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but I cannot trust you at this stage. Tell me the specifics. And he said, oh, I've done this before. And says, well, here's the problem. I cannot find you on Google or LinkedIn, which is pretty rare. And he killed the deal. And so as you progress in a relationship with the investors, they're going to basically poke and poke until they find out your weakness. That doesn't mean it's a fatal flaw. We don't expect to know it all. But I think we want you to be honest as opposed to bullshitters.
Okay, since we are approaching the limit pretty much, but we've already crossed it. Last question. I'll just combine what Nafe asked and then what we wanted to ask is, like, are there other investors rather than angel in the FastF? And we know that that angels are from the heaven, and are there any dark sides having angels backing up?
There's dark side to every investor, because I always jokes you can divorce your husband, but you cannot divorce an investor because they're on your cap table. I mean, that's just dark humor here.
Yeah.
There are investors who don't know what they are doing. We call them tourist investors. They come into your space. They really like the fact, especially in 2021, it was like really insanity there. People were throwing money at people. That's over, by the way. And then they kill companies when the things go difficult, like what is now. And so I've seen people on board who kill company because they couldn't deal with what we call the J curve in healthcare, which means it goes down because of all the regulatory and the trials before it goes back up. And if you have the wrong investor, they could kill you. So you have to really be careful. And then the majority wants to help you. And so I will say, I think it's probably more bad VCs than bad angels, but that's just my little bias here.
So,
one downside is they can take your time. Like if you have a lot of angel investors and they want to know something every week. But
I mean, typically what you do is that you go to angel group because they have a process in place to communicate. There's usually one person that's the person that's the champion that basically spread information. Nowadays with the internet, you can do a Zoom once a quarter there and just tell everybody whoever's to show up. You can send an email with everything. It's fine. I'm still alive. It's not that complicated. It used to be much harder before all those tools were there. So it's not that complicated to have investor relation. I always tell people, and this could be maybe the final note, is your first customer, the first person was to believe in you and believe in your vision is the investor. If you cannot tell them, that means you won't be able to attract employees to follow you because they can't see anything either, and you won't be able to get the first customer. So you have to learn how to sell and be credible.
So like doing some research about the investors is also useful.
Number
And
one.
How,
Number one.
how important is to just of course the relationship matters, and I believe that personality wise the connection also has to be there between the investor and the founders. Otherwise I believe there will be a fight all the time, right?
There has to be trust. There's so many reasons why things are going to go wrong, and we know that. We know the product may not work, science may not cooperate, the FDA may go crazy, or whatever it is. But we have to trust the jockey. If the jockey is saying, I don't know what to do, help me, we will help. If the trust me says, I have a setback, what should I do? And you say, well, in the past. And so, but what you cannot do is everything is fine, and then you get these emails 6 months later, say, oh, by the way, I'm running out of money next week, please send me more money. That is, so you have to be honest. You treat us as we work with you. We're a partner in your growth, and that's the type of investor you need to look for. We're not done money.
Yeah, I mean, you want someone that when things are bad are going to be like in the trenches with you, helping to dig out.
I mean, I'm a psychologist in my spare time. I'm just kidding, because you basically, when you're depressed, I bring you back up. When you're manic, I bring you back down. And you want somebody who can basically titrate where you are, because it's a journey. I tell people is to say, I want you to visualize the best time of your life. Okay, you feel what happened there? Okay, I want you to visualize the worst time of your life. Okay, you feel that? That happens to you every day, both of them during a startup. So you have to be able to go for this roller coaster and having a team that keeps you in check.
Okay.
All right, good luck.
Annie and Jill, thanks a lot. I would like to, Naresh, you want to say something?
No, this is great. I hope, and you understand like how naive and how basic the information postdocs and grad students need is, but appreciate your patience. And I hope some of the startups are going to come up and build great ones. Jill, thank you so much. I know it's late.
Yeah, and I recommend everybody to do it, because you will be a better person even if you fail. And that's the beauty of the valley.
Yeah, I can vouch for it. I'm an example. I failed, and like the cost of failing is so low at this point. If you're in the valley, I'm building my second startup again. Like, so it's better than going for the second or third or fourth freaking postdocs. Please don't do that. Go join a company, startup company, or build your own company. Okay. All right. On that high note,
Agreed.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.